On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with a survivor named Harmony. And Harmony was in a 20-year toxic marriage with a police officer. It's a story of victim playing, jealousy, isolation, and caretaking. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. This is a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad. And thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspective. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Harmony, I just want to first thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you have not left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., please leave us a 5-star written review as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to ranking. Now, if you have not been to our website recently at narcissistapocalypse.com, please do go there if you want to be part of our show. Top of the page, there's a button that says guest form. Click on that button, fill out the guest form, and away we'll go. Another way to be on the show at narcissistapocalypse.com, side of the page, there's a floating button that says send voicemail. Click that button. It records up to 5 minutes. If you need to click it twice, 3 times. We are collecting letters to my narcissist for our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode. And if you do not want to read your letter, yourself, send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com, and myself or my old pal Melissa will read it for you. Other things going on our site. We have high conflict parenting courses. Yes, we are offering high conflict parenting courses at narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. We have partnered with Online Parenting, and many of the courses we are offering were created by Bill Eddy. And if you've listened to our episode last year with a divorce lawyer named Helen, you'll know that Bill Eddy is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court, and now he's helped create many parenting courses to help you through divorce and to help support your children too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. And what else do we have here? Our Patreon. Last week on our Patreon, on Saturday, we had our first support group meeting. I think it went pretty well. I think everyone who joined had a good time. And we shared stories. That episode or that support group viewing, you can, if you join our Patreon, you can still view that actual night that we had. You can learn a lot from it. And also on our Patreon, we have episodes that never made it to air, follow-up episodes with former guests, and some fun stuff with me and my old pal Melissa. So if you want to join our Patreon, we are having new stuff up there every single week, and you want to support the show, become a patron of our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. And let's see. I think that is it, everyone. This episode is it's really informative episode. It's really well done. Stay to the end. I mean, Harmony is as cool as a cucumber throughout the whole thing, but at the end, it gets a little bit emotional. So anyway, I'm just going to get out of my way and your way, everyone. Enjoy this episode. Thank you once again to Harmony. And here is my interview conversation with Harmony. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Harmony. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Brandon. How are you?
I am doing well. And I am just going to get out of my way and your way. I want to thank you for being here with us today and sharing your story. Harmony, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. So I guess I'll just start out by just a little bit about my background. I, before I was with my husband, it was pretty much status quo. I have a really good job. I have 5 sisters, so life is pretty busy with that and chaotic. Normal upbringing, a little bit here and there. And about the time when I met was probably when I was in high school. We actually met in high school. So we hung around a little bit of the same circles. We dated for maybe, 1 minute. And from that point on, then he went on with his life and I went on with my life. We met up again probably about the time when we were in our 20s. It was, he was working at a bar. He was bouncing, and I worked a little bit of waitressing here and there, so we would bump into each other here and there. We grew up in a really small town, so it was kind of, it wasn't uncommon to bump into people that or, him, so to speak, so it was always back and forth. Just so happened that when we did end up getting together was just around the time in our 20s. It was, I was single, he was single. We just kind of meshed. As far as how, I guess, there was probably a lot of grooming in the beginning, I would imagine, and a lot of love bombing. A lot of what he did was he was really attentive and assertive with me. He was very focused on my needs and what I like, what I wanted out of my life. He kind of checked all my boxes, I guess, so to speak, where it was he wanted to get married, have a family, end up with two kids and the white picket fence, everything. So, it was pretty clear from the beginning that, he was on the same path that I was on and that we basically had the same thoughts in mind for what we wanted for our future. We started dating. It was very quick. We spent pretty much all of our time together, and he would start to tell me stories about his family, about how his mom was mean, and, he didn't like his stepdad, and, he felt that his 2 siblings were, favored versus how he was treated. He would kind of go off and talk about a little bit of, that there may have been some abuse from, his previous, from his dad from before his real father, and that he had a lot of issues. So, but then he also portrayed that he was very strong and that he's overcome a lot of these issues and that the only thing he wants to do is do the right thing. So I think that's kind of where the buy-in kind of came into place, where I felt like he was in a really good place mentally and that he had he was self-aware, I guess, as to the things that happened to him in his life, but then he overcame them because he was also then, in the same respect, he would talk about how smart he is or how he strives to be successful. He also did a lot of elaborate vacations and trips where he would, go off and wrestle alligators or bull ride, just things to kind of, he called them adrenaline vacations. So, he was complex and interesting and, kind of a little bit of everything. So that's what I really liked about him in the beginning. And the fact that he was also, in this, just treating me well, right? Mm-hmm. Shortly after, it was kind of, you could kind of see, and I didn't see it back then because I was really taken by his charm and his charisma. But early on, now that I look at it, that I'm kind of looking at it from the outside in, he had a lot of jealousy issues where, I would go out with my friends. We would meet up later, whatever. He would get upset if I was talking to a male. He would, if I wanted to go out with my friends, instead of going out to dinner or staying home, he would, call me, say I'm a party girl or call me names and, call all my friends were whores. So that kind of started early on as well.
And at that time, what did you think about that? Did you let that slide? Did you challenge that? Or what was your thought process on that? Did you look at it as like he cares about me, or you were just, taken by the other stuff that you just let it go?
So I think I kind of took it that he was, he cared about me, because the way he spun it, he would say, I want to spend time with you. I want to be with you. I don't want you being away from me. So that was kind of, I guess, the mind trick, so to speak, that I was like, wow, you're really into me. Like, you just want to spend your time with me. That's great. But then when it was, I would also fight it a little bit too, because, we were young, and, I have, like I said, I have a lot of sisters. I have my friends. So it's like, we wanted to go out and have fun and blow off steam, and he was more than welcome to come with us. He just chose not to, and then wanted to complain about it. So it was kind of, I would fight him on that, because I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm just still going to go out and do what I want to do. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And, then he would be okay with it, but then, would be kind of in his bank of, stuff to use against you later. So it was more like passive aggressive, I guess, if I explain that correctly, where, he's like, oh, do what you want. That's fine. But just so that I want to spend time with you, or I think you go out too much, but that's just me.
And would you get okay. Would you feel a lot of guilt in those situations to then eventually?
Sometimes, maybe I wouldn't go out as much, or I would go home earlier. Like maybe just go for dinner and then not stay out for drinks. Things like that, or call him. Back then we didn't have texting or anything like that. We would, I think we might have had cell phones. But, we would probably call each other, or he would call me, and if I would feel guilty if I missed his call or couldn't hear him. So, it went from where I was able to do things that I wanted to do to eventually I wasn't doing anything.
And
that was over.
Did he have a lot of friends?
No, he would always say that he had a lot of friends and he knew a lot of people, but he never really engaged with a lot of people.
Okay.
So it was always, he, self-proclaimed like that, he has tons of friends, he's this, he's that. And then when it comes down to it, he never made plans with any of his friends. It was always, I think I can count on one hand, like how many times we actually did something with his friends. It was always with my friends or, the couples that I knew, things like that. It was never anything that he brought into our circle. And later down the road, it was pretty much anybody around us was because I brought them in. It wasn't anybody that he brought into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, eventually it turned into where it would go, first he was a little passive aggressive about it. Then it would turn into full-on fights about me going out or me wanting to go, even to the point of going shopping with like my mom or going out to dinner with my sisters. It was always a fight to try to make plans with other people besides him. And eventually it got to the point where I just stopped making plans altogether because it was just not worth the fight for me. So that was kind of, I think, one of the big things. And I thought it was a little bit of a jerk move for him to be like that, but I didn't think about the whole like control and narcissistic behavior, because I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know about that condition back then, or that's a sign of more things to come, so to speak. So it was very benign, I guess, at the time. You just think like, oh, this guy's kind of, he's a little jealous, or he's a little this, a little that. I never felt controlling or abusive. So, I agreed, and I thought I felt bad for him because I was like, hey, it's making him sad by me, like, not spending time with him and spending time with other people, so I'm going to spend more time with him and less time with other people. So that was, I think, one of the big red flags that I did even pick up on from the beginning. The other, I think, was just, the way that he would talk and act when we went places and did things. Like, it was always, he always had to have the best stories. He always had to have, like, he did everything. He knows everything. So, it used to be kind of endearing and kind of cute that, like, oh, wow, this guy's so cool. Like, he has all of these, feathers in his cap. Like, he's so smart. He's so intelligent. He's so brave. And now that I look at it, I'm like, gosh, that's crazy. Like, doesn't make sense to me anymore. But, so that type of stuff was happening too. And that was, I think, maybe his self-validation for making himself feel valued and better when we go out and we do things, or just kind of like wanting people to admire you. I don't really, I try not to get in his head too much because it's very complicated, but that was kind of another, I guess, red flag. And then also, the way that he portrays people in his life. Like, he would constantly complain about his mom and how mean she is to him, or how much she doesn't care about him. And, his stepdad doesn't care about him, and everybody treats him badly. And he's, the one that always has the short end of the stick with everything. And as I got to know the family and learn about all of this, like, his mom she's more of an enabler, and like, she's basically his biggest fan. So the whole perception about how he sees things, I think, is a little warped. So I never thought about that before. I always thought it was just him trying to rationalize like behavior, or maybe he truly believes it, or maybe she was that way with him when he was younger. I don't know. I wasn't there. I only know how things are now. So I would get a lot of flack for that. And also, he would complain about me to people too. Like, sometimes he would do it in front of me, and other times he would do it behind my back. But it was always something along the lines of, I don't like this, or, I don't want to go on vacation, or I choose to go out with my friends versus hanging out with him. So it was always very, like I was the bad guy, and he was always the victim. He always portrays the victim, and probably still doing that to this day. As far as, the controlling behaviors, his trying to rationalize, his way of behavior. He was also very aggressive, and kind of like, he was abusive, like physically, but I think that kind of grew later. So being aggressive, what I mean by that is that, like, you always felt protective of him. Like, if somebody were to come up and maybe talk to me or say something that he didn't like, he's the first person on the front line to be like, you need to go off, or whatever it is. I remember one time, like, I bumped into one of my ex-boyfriends. We were at a party, and next thing you know, my husband had him up in the corner. Like, I don't know what was going on, but so he definitely isn't scared to fight. And I just talk that up as like, he's just, that's just how he is. He's a guy. Like, that's just what he does. When he started to get aggressive with me in the beginning, it was probably more like just like holding my arms, or like maybe, walking by me and like, shoulder checks, things like that. It was never anything that I thought was abuse. I just didn't really think about it. It was just kind of like, then he would apologize and say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm sorry. I was angry. I was mad. I didn't think. I didn't know what I was doing. I heard that a lot too. So, that's kind of how that started. And I never really thought much of it. I just, I wanted to help him. I wanted to, I felt like he was helping me be a better person. Like, maybe I did go out too much. Maybe I should be home more. It really makes you think, like, what am I doing? Am I doing these things? Are they wrong? Like, I don't, now I look back at it, I was just a normal person. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But, he really, in a sense, like, you missed out on, things even with your family, like going out and, fun places with your family out to dinner or something like that. And, but back then, I did it for him, and I was like, yeah, maybe I should stay home more. Maybe I should learn how to cook. Maybe I should do all these things, because that's going to help him become happier, which in turn will make me happier, right? So that was kind of a lot of the beginning, and I just thought that I had to do things because I want this relationship to work. I want him to be happy. And in the same time, I wanted to help him with his demons. He had all these issues about like mistreatment from his family. He would always, he would work a job and something would happen. There would be falling out. Either he would get fired or he would quit. And then it would be, well, they treated me unfairly. They did this, they did that. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's see what happened. Let's figure this out. And I would always take his side because, he was my husband or my boyfriend at the time. Like, why am I not going to take his side? So, needless to say, things would get progressively worse with that type of stuff. Like, I wouldn't go out as much. I would spend more time home with him. But that still wasn't good enough. There was always fighting. We would get to the point where sometimes we would just sit and not even talk because he was just mad at me for something. I don't even know what. Maybe he didn't like that. I used to paint my nails, like once a week or whatever. And I would sit on the couch and he's like, why do you need to do that? Well, because I like to do it. Well, why? So, got to the point where I felt like I couldn't even do that in my house. So, sounds pretty awful. This sounds like I don't even know why I married him.
Oh, no. I mean, at this point, you're in this relationship, you're doing what you think is the belief system of what a relationship is supposed to be in your mind. You want to help this person, you love this person, and you can see... Do you feel like you want them to change, or do you feel like you want that you think you can, he's making you better and you want to make him better, and that's where you're at? You think change can happen?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think there's certain things that I would want to change with him. Maybe the whole making him trust me more. I always thought that I had to always defend myself to make him trust me more. See, I didn't go out Friday night with the girls. I'm home with you. I went out to dinner with, my sister. I came right home. I only had one drink. So I think I wanted to change his perspective of me, and that essentially would make the relationship happier. And then I also thought that, we were together for a really long time. So, we started out in our 20s. We ended in our 40s. So it's kind of like when you're in your 20s and you get to that point in your life, you don't want to do those things as much anymore. I didn't want to go to happy hour when I'm getting older. You get tired, you get hungover. So I was kind of glad that he was, kind of making me more self-aware of that in a sense. I mean, now I know it was probably wrong, but back then I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should stay home and cook dinner. That's what's expected of us. We're getting to be an old married couple. That's what we do. We don't go to bars anymore. We don't have to. He would always say, why do you need to go to bars? You don't. And I'm like, well, I don't go out looking for people. We go out because we want wine. We're hanging out with our friends, talking, we're laughing. And his interpretation was, well, you're going out to bars to meet people. That's why people go. And I'm sure that's the case sometimes. But I'm sure I'm guilty of it too. But when I'm with him and in a relationship, that's not why I go to bars. So that kind of, I think, he put that in my head. Well, you're only going out because you want to find someone. Well, no, then maybe I don't go out, right? I don't have to find anybody. So I think that kind of, in a sense, I wanted him and I to kind of grow together to be better. But then also, I also thought that it was all about what we need to communicate to each other and how we can compromise to make each other happy. And apparently, I think I might have been doing more of the compromising, where he just kind of was entitled and just wanted all these things and wasn't compromising. Because if he ever wanted to go out, which didn't happen often, but I never questioned it. I was always like, yeah, do it. Or I would even say to my friends, go out, do this, do that. That's totally fine with me. And, it just, whatever, maybe because I thought, well, I wasn't jealous, he was. And meanwhile, it was the whole polar opposite of why he was going out versus why I went out. So, we got married. The good thing is we kind of waited. I don't know how good it is, but we waited to have kids until later on in our marriage. We waited probably about 7 or 8 years. We moved to a different state. His thing was that he always wanted to get a police job, and he was really adamant about it. So we ended up moving to a different state because he ended up getting a police job. And we moved, and I was kind of relieved to actually move because I felt okay, now when I go out with him and we go out to dinner, or say we want to go to the store, we want to do something, I don't have to feel anxious that I'm going to bump into somebody I know that maybe he doesn't know, especially if it's a male, and have him kind of interrogate me about it. Because we would, when they used to have the video stores, like we would go in, like I remember one instance, we went into like Blockbuster Video, and I walked in and I bumped into somebody that I knew. It was just a friend of a friend or whatever, and I was talking to him for like, 5 minutes or whatever. And, we got in a fight over it because he's like, who was that? Why were you talking to him? Do you sleep with him? Blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, no, like, still got to the point, even when I did see people I knew that, like, I kind of even knew, because I guess, like, when you see people like, the natural thing to do is be friendly, right? You want to smile, say hi. Not there talking to them for like an hour. But, he would basically, like, if I saw anyone I knew, I would either, if it was somebody safe that I knew he knew, preferably a female, one of my girlfriends, it was fine. But if it was like a male friend or a friend of a friend, I had to basically like hope and pray that they didn't recognize me or turn my head, because I didn't want to deal with the repercussions of what he was going to throw down at me. So, moving, I felt really relieved about moving, because I was like, we're not going to know anybody. I'm not going to know anybody. I'm not going to feel uncomfortable walking into the grocery store, or uncomfortable going into a restaurant, or whatever it is. So
at that point, when you're thinking that, we're far into your relationship at this point, and now you're that's your thought process of thinking that. Are you thinking to yourself, I shouldn't be having this? Shouldn't be a thought process of mine, or is it not even in your head yet that like that is
Nope.
wrong?
Yeah, I'm not even thinking like that. I'm thinking more along the lines of, I shouldn't have been friends with all these people to know all these people. I shouldn't have had this many boyfriends, or I shouldn't have done this. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's all my fault.
Yeah, and so you're feeling like shame about your life.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that wasn't even a thought that what he was doing wasn't normal, or, I know people didn't normally do that, but I wasn't thinking that I was thinking more along the lines of, well, he's just very, assertive, and he just loves me so much,
But somehow though, unconsciously you're thinking about, a survival technique, in a sense of like,
yep.
You guys moving is some form of survival technique, even though you don't probably at the time acknowledge it in that sort of way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good point, because, it was, from that point on, I think that's all it was survival. And just doing things, so that I'm not going to upset the apple cart, and that, because when he's on point, when he's happy, he's fine. Like he can be gregarious. He can be fun to hang out with. Like, it's not, but those times are usually when it's on his terms. It's always like, if we're on vacation, that's, we go on vacation, he's not going to fight with me on vacation. But, of course, if it's something he wants to do, a vacation he picks, right? Because we don't go on any other types of vacations. So that type of thing. Or, sometimes, I would say going out to dinner, but, we've had occurrences where he's been miserable going out to dinner. But, if he's in a good headspace for some odd reason, whatever it is, then he expects everybody around him to be in a good headspace, and he'll be fine. It's when he's not in a good headspace that he wants to start trouble, and he wants to, fight and do all these things. So that's kind of, my job, I guess, at the time was to try to intercept that bad headspace and, constantly try to make it better for him, and basically fawn all over him and make sure that he wasn't bad, that he was well taken care of, that he was happy. So I kind of fell into like a caretaker role with it, where it was all about like, how can I make this better for you? What do you need help with? What can I do to make you not angry? And, so it was all about like me, like, okay, I didn't go out anymore. I moved, 5 hours away from my family, away from everything I know, to be with you because you're following your dream with your job. So, that's kind of where I was. And, then of course I had to work because, he likes to spend money like ridiculous. So, I get a job and, again, then we go with, okay, I meet people I work with. I like the people I work with. I enjoy what I do for work. I want to get my certifications. There's certain things, I work in HR, so there's certain things that I want to get in place to build my career. And it was always, no, like, why do you need to do that? Why do you need this? I remember once I wanted to switch jobs because I found when I first moved, I found a job right away. Then 9 months down the road, I started looking again and I found a better paying job. I interviewed, I got the job and I think even during the whole process, I didn't even think it was like a question. I told him, I'm like, yeah, I'm going on a job interview on Thursday. He's like, why? Well, because, I want to get this better job. My situation from getting this other job and blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, you didn't discuss it with me. I'm like, well, I didn't think I had to. It's for our benefit. Like, why do I have to discuss this? He's like, oh, well, like he has to give me permission. And I was kind of like, well, that, then kind of was like, oh, that's a little weird, but okay. I'm discussing it with you now. Like, this is what I want to do. And he got, we fought over it, but eventually, I ended up moving on and getting another job. And, he would just get, of course, then, I'm trying to, we don't have any kids yet. So I'm trying to build a network of friends and for us to do things like on the low key, obviously, just very low key, like maybe go for a company event or, find a couples that are married that we can have dinners with, stuff like that. And, he worked odd hours because, he was working in police work. So he was working odd hours. And, it was always, I spent a lot of time by myself, which I didn't really complain about because I enjoyed it. It was just, he never really questioned when I spent money. Like if I went to the grocery store or shopping or whatever, it was always, I was kind of okay with spending money. But, so when he was working, I would go shopping or I would find the local, all the local stores that I liked. And, eventually it just, I had a network of a couple of friends and stuff that I made sure that he knew and I brought around him. And, so he can basically, quote unquote, approve of. And, but I could never go out. It was always like I would just have somebody over the house for like some wine or dinner or something. It was never like going out unless we all went out together like this. So that was pretty much my life for a couple of years while we were settled in our new state, in our new town and environment. Being that he, worked as a police officer, you would think that he would have opportunity to work a lot of overtime, to make a lot of money, opportunities to meet a lot of people, to kind of build that kinship with your fellow boys in blue, so to speak. That never happened. He worked the bare minimum. He complained about it the whole time. He never wanted to bring anybody around me. He never wanted to make plans with like anybody that he knew at work. I mean, they go through a hardcore process of academies and stuff like that. Like, how do you not bond with people? And that's kind of, where now that I look at it, I'm like, that seems very odd. Like, if you're not going to make friends on a regular basis, at least you're going to make friends if you're in a academy with somebody. You'll find one person. And, he had a couple of people that he would talk about here and there, but I don't think I think I met one person in, the almost 15 years we were there. And, it was just like he came over for something, like we went on a boat ride or something. That was it. Everything else was, he never brought anybody around me. Now later, I understand that he wouldn't wear his wedding ring either. And he would tell me that's because he didn't want people to know much about him because where he worked was a really high crime area. And the less people knew about him, the better. So I never really questioned that. But now I know it was because he wanted to portray that he was available, right? So, that kind of stuff, it's kind of like you look at things later and everything kind of, all these red flags kind of kick in and you're just like, wow, that's crazy. So it's kind of, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around.
Oh, no,
There's just a lot of stuff going on in my head.
I think it's pretty linear.
Good. So, then we had my son, and, I would have my family come down and they would stay with us, usually because it was a really long drive for them to come visit. So my family would come and stay with us for like months at a time, which I loved because it was great. He was fine with it, but he was also, sometimes he would get rude. Like he would be rude to my father. He would be kind of rude to my mom. He just didn't really care who he offended. But, they all took it with a grain of salt, just like, hey, we're not going to rock the boat. And, it's your husband, it is what it is. And everybody kind of already knows that he's the whiner of the family. Like he's always complaining about this, he's complaining about that, and knows that he has like all of these like whining issues. So we just kind of let it roll. I had my son, and the whole time when I came home from the hospital, he wouldn't hold him. He wouldn't really even acknowledge him. My son looks a lot like me, so he would go out in the back and just kind of do whatever he needed to do, and make comments, just in passing, like, not my kid, doesn't look like me. So, of course, I'm going through my own stuff with just having a baby, my first baby, and trying to take care of him and trying to do all these things for him, and he's not lifting a finger at all to do anything. They barely even acknowledging his son, like just kind of like, and it's weird because I didn't expect that from him back then. Now I'd be like, yeah, that's totally on point, but because I've witnessed him with his family, like with the small cousins and the kids and stuff, and he's fine with them. Like he plays with them, he's attentive. But now I think that was all just show. I always thought he'd be a good dad because he likes kids and he's receptive and he's good with them. Like he generally shows an interest, and that's all he would talk about when we were younger, is like his nephews and nieces and how much time he spends with them and how much he loves them, and he's, blah, blah, blah. But now looking back, that was pretty much all bullshit. It was all just a show.
So when he would say things like, this child doesn't look like me, how would you respond? And was that devastating for you to hear?
I can't say it was something that I didn't. It didn't. The things that he would say to me on a regular basis, so that was really what didn't really hurt, I guess, so to speak. So I wasn't like, I just kind of blew it off because I'm like, I think at this point I was just thinking like, you're just an idiot. Like I don't even. Right after I think I had my kids was when his words aren't really affecting me, because I think that I was just so concerned about what I needed to do for them, and like your priorities change a lot. Speaking just from my own personal experience, like I just feel like maybe the things that he was saying were starting to sound like really off the wall and stupid, honestly. And for him to make comments upon comments about things I just would get to the point where I was still trying to defend myself, and I was still trying to like understand why he would say the things he would say. But then other times I was just kind of like, he's crazy. Like, just let him ride. I don't care. Like, he'll get over it in 10 minutes and then he'll be fine.
Okay,
so that's kind of where I was with it.
So did it take having children to realize you had 2 children, correct?
Yes.
Did it take having 2 children to realize that you had 3 children?
Yes. Yes.
And
very much so.
And when you realized, like, did he start to become jealous of the time you spent with your children? Was he at that point competing in his mind with the children? You can see it in his mannerisms and the way he acts, but he would never admit to that. So I always felt that he felt that way about it, but he's never going to come clean and act out on it. Like, he will act out on other things. He will act out on, I'm a big whore. He would always constantly accuse me of cheating on him all the time.
all the time, even after I had kids. Like, that never changed, and make me pay for things. But when it came to the kids and what I have to do for them, he would act a certain way, like he would be a little resentful, but he wouldn't blatantly say it, or he wouldn't do something that was so like catastrophic to make me realize, oh, you're only doing this because I'm spending time with our kid right now. If that makes sense.
Yep. And once you had the kids and grandparents, I guess his parents, which that's what I mean, the grandparents on his side, how did they interact with the family and him and you guys once the kids came?
So, it was fine. They were around. I mean, they would visit us more often because we had the kids. So, my family and his family are very good with the kids. So, in a sense, it was helpful to have them around because they, kind of like how it's enabled, with all of the stuff that he needs to do, they would enable it too by being sort of like helping us a lot with the kids. Like, I was always the one putting the babies down, changing them, and taking care of their day-to-day necessities. But, they were always holding them, taking care of them, allowing us to go out to eat and stuff. So it was helpful. And in turn, I think that made him happier. Nobody ever really acknowledged the fact that he wasn't like holding his son or that I was doing all the work. I'm sure they could see it, but, no one's going to call him out on it because then it's going to start a fight. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of where that took a turn. And it was nice for me having everybody around because it was super helpful. And he took advantage of it too because then, we're so busy with kids, you guys go out and eat. And then he'd be like, oh, like, I can't, I'm so tired, if the baby cry, then it was always about him and the break that he needs, right? Which I kind of find humorous now. It's like, really, dude? Like, okay, like, good for you. I'm so glad you can get away from a crying baby that you have nothing to do with at this point. So, that kind of ran its course. He was still complaining about his job, complaining about me, obviously because I went back to work, complaining about me working. He would, I think, and I can't really say for sure, but I think usually when he had somebody in the wings, like if he was either cheating on me or if he was thinking about it or had somebody that he was interested or talking to, he would get really mad at me during that time. And I never really thought about it until, I started learning about all of this stuff with projection and all of that. He would get aggressive. He would fight with me. He brought up all this stuff that didn't even make sense to me. Like, he would say to me, oh, just like when you used to work at the bar and you used to work there till 4:00 in the morning and you were off, sleeping with the bartender. You were off doing this. You were off doing that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he would just make all of these outlandish accusations, like, that he believed. I truly believe to this day, he believes that they're real. And I don't even know who he's talking about, honestly. It's the strangest thing. So he would get really upset with me. He would fight with me. He would start with the physical stuff. Like, it was more like he would punch walls and break stuff. Obviously never his stuff. It was always like a chair, break a wall that he can patch up. Things that I think he knew have no value because he's not going to break, like, something that he really liked. So, that he would, then it would get to the point where it would get physical. And I can't really recall, but I think it might have happened a little bit before I had the kids. And then a lot later after we had the kids. So, and like I said, it would start out with just like the shaking. He likes to, grab the throat and stuff like that. But then he would act like he's out of control. Like, he would, say, well, I was really angry. I was drunk. There's a whole line of excuses about why he did this. It was never his fault. He blacked out. I've heard this a lot from just in general, like I've heard this kind of my whole life from different sources, is sometimes people, when they get really aggressive and they fight, they just kind of black out and they go into survival mode and they just kind of like take off. So I kind of thought that that's what it was. Like he's so upset. It's ridiculous why he's upset at this point. Like, I'm constantly trying to defend myself because I have to prove to him that what he's saying isn't right. But then we just fight. Then it just, and he's the aggressor. Like, I'm not going after him. I wouldn't. No way. Like, that would just make things way worse. So I just, it would run its course. And then, the next morning or an hour later, whatever it was, he'd be sorry. He would cry, complain about how he doesn't want to be this way. He doesn't understand why he does it. But, that would happen, I think, around the time when he was probably off doing something or wanting to do something. Because that's just my gut, what I think. So, in the midst of trying to, raise kids and raise a husband and have family over and stuff, it was kind of, I think it was almost like trying to calm a storm for many years. And, I thought I left a couple of times. Usually it was right after I had one of the kids, because, I wanted to really start putting my foot down, being like, it's not okay for you to treat me like this. Like, I don't deserve it. I don't understand why you're like this. And his response was always like, well, if you weren't such a whore, I wouldn't have to treat you like this. It's all your fault. And, so I would leave. I'd go stay with my family for 12 weeks or whatever it is, and with the kids, and then he would, tell me that he's taking a whole bunch of classes, he's doing a lot of reading, he's going here, he's going there, he's not drinking, whatever it was to get me back, right?
Mm-hmm. And what would your family think when you were coming to stay for 12 weeks? Did you tell them the truth about what was going on? And if so, when you went back, what were their feelings about everything?
So I wouldn't tell them the truth. I would tell them, they knew that he was a pain. They knew that he was high maintenance. They knew that he verbally talked to me the way he did. They didn't know that he was hitting me. I didn't tell anybody that for many years because I didn't want them, first, I didn't want them to worry. And second, I didn't want to hear it. And I want to be able to make my choices, right? Because, once you leave and you have to go do that's the end. Like, you're not going back. Like, you're stupid if you go back, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to hear it. So, that was kind of my angle of it. And, nobody really pushed me for it. It was what it was. And, then when he, said all the right things and made a concerned, quote unquote, effort, which, was not really true, I would go back. And then things would be good for a month. They'd be good for 2 weeks. They'd be good for, I think the longest we went was probably 4 or 5 months. And then it would start up again. Then it would start out slowly, right? It would start with the drinking was a kind of a big thing for him. He would say he's not an alcoholic. He's a binge drinker. I don't know what's what, but, he would, and I'm not much of a drinker. Like, I could take it or leave it, but, he would, kind of quit cold turkey. And I was like, fine, I don't need to drink. That's cool. I'll do it too. And, then it would start with the O'Douls, drinking the beers or whatever. So he indulged in that. And then we'd start getting wine again. And then it would be the wine. And it would be who knows what else. Because I think he hid a lot of it from me. Not that I was like, I'm not your mom. I'm not going to watch your drinking. So he would hide a lot of it. And then there would be another occurrence. And then it would be probably bigger than the last one. This would be a little bit more, it would take a little bit longer to inch up to where it needed to go. And sometimes I could diffuse it, sometimes I couldn't. Then it would blow up. And you never knew when that was going to be. Whether it was going to be when I came home from work one day, was it going to be on a Saturday, was it going to be when he came home from work? I don't know.
So when you had your kids to, I guess, the end of the relationship, that would have been, in my mind, let's say, at least 10 years.
Yeah.
That time period?
Probably going on 12.
Yeah, so let's say it's 12 years. So, I've heard a lot of stories before where eventually the partner who is you in the story, the survivor of the story, that everything eventually became kind of like a pattern. Everything started. You went through the ebbs and flows. It's like you knew what kind of wave you were riding, and you knew exactly when it was going to crash. And they were like 2-year like pockets or 3-year pockets where there was always some sort of big event, and then it would all kind of restart again. And then the same thing would happen, and then it would restart again. So was that was your experience? And can you describe kind of like maybe when you realized how you knew the ebbs and flows and what you would look for?
Yeah. So that's definitely the way it would happen. It would, I always knew that when I came back, I would have at least a week, to 2 weeks sometimes of good treatment, and the kids would be happy. We would all be happy, provided we were, kind of like, it was kind of like a honeymoon phase. So I always knew that I had that amount of time, maybe pushing it a month, right? So the red flags or the things that I would notice make it kind of change would be when he would start to get like impatient with me or with the kids. He would not, the types of behaviors, the love bombing that he was doing would just kind of completely stop. He would be more like, first he was assertive with me, like, taking care of me, so to speak, I guess, kind of like, maybe bringing me flowers or maybe playing with the kids or, saying, oh, mom's tired right now. Let's go out back. Let's go on the swing. Let's do this. Let's go whatever. And then once the impatience would kick in, that would stop. Then he would start coming home where it was like, he would just be, I'm so tired, or, I'm just really stressed out. And then kind of like, or he would kind of fall back into not being as happy, I guess, where I would have to chime in because he was doing it for me for 2 weeks, right? So now I have to be the one like, what do you need? What can I help you with? Do you need me to rub your back? Do you need me to take the kids out for an hour? Like, how can I help you? Because I'm reciprocating for the way he treated me for 2 weeks, right? And then it would just turn into, then all of a sudden I'm doing that all the time, and he's just getting progressively worse. So I guess that's kind of where, and then it would just get to the point where his thing was he would like slam things on the counter or walk really heavy or slam doors. So then when you know that that's happening, that's when you know that like stuff's going to get real pretty quick. And then it would turn into, or he would just make noises out of the blue, like just kind of like random noises, or, kind of just do things like that. And then when I see that what I'm doing isn't helping him, then I kind of like go into my survival mode where I'm like, listen, I'm just going to avoid you. Like I'm going to go, I'm going to make sure that when he comes home late at night, if he's working, like sometimes I would stay up and wait for him so we could talk and hang out and stuff. I would make sure I'm either asleep or I'm pretending to be asleep because I am not going to deal with you when you come home. And then it would just erode because then all of a sudden I'm not looking out for his best interest because I don't care. I'm ignoring him. It turns on me. It's the reason why he's acting like this. So that's kind of, I think, the MO that he kind of justified why he acted like that.
Mm-hmm. And as, time went on, I guess the events that would be the blow-up events, they would get worse, I'm going to assume. And, at a certain point, the kids are probably, towards the end, in maybe the last 2 episodes, they're somewhere between 7 and 12 years old, I'm going to assume. So, they know at that point, they're really are probably in tune of kind of what's going on. their headspace, or are they, how affected are they by everything and their relationship? Like, are they scared? And how are they behaving while this is going on?
So when, they're kind of, I guess it's kind of, they're a little numb to it at this point because they've witnessed it. I think to them it's kind of, at the time anyway, it was kind of normal because what else do they know? Which is really sad, and I hate that happened. But they, they kind of, I guess, would, obviously they would cry. They would be upset. They would, when they were little, they didn't, I did my best to protect them by, not bringing it around them. Like if he followed me into the bedroom, I would, close the door, or we would go outside, or I would try to keep it away from them, because typically it wouldn't happen midday, like when we're all out. The little fights would, the little dicks, like the gaslighting and stuff, would happen during the day. But the real stuff would happen pretty much when they were in bed, like when they were tucked away. So, that's one reason I think why I really, they're not crazy. Like, he's not crazy. He's calculating as to when he acts the way he does. Because, people who don't have control over things, they're going to do it in the middle of, like, the mall. They're going to do it all, wherever. He has no control over it. He's just doing it to prove a point and to just be this abusive person. So it was always, like, I think, strategic on his side, where it would happen when, they weren't around. I mean, obviously there's a couple occasions where, like, sometimes I would feel safer, like, going into my son's room because I knew he wasn't going to come in there and start grabbing me and doing stuff to me, right? I'm not proud of it, but that would make me feel safe because I knew that was a safe room for me to be in, because he's not going to follow me in there and pull me out by my hair or anything. So, he would, sometimes he would leave me alone. Other times he might, like, open the door and be like, you need to come out, we need to talk. Because it was always about, we're talking, right? We need to talk. So sometimes I would come out. Sometimes I would just say, you need to leave me alone. Because, we started having, part of our agreement when I would come back was I was like, listen, when you get like that, you need to cool off and you need to stop. And if I tell you to stop, you need to stop. And he agreed to it. And he only did that a couple of times. And then it was like, no, then he didn't care anymore. And I think, at that point, when he started not caring about the kids being around and anybody being around, that's when I'm like, no, this is not going to happen anymore. And, I did leave. I left again for about 7 months. I told my family what was going on. I told his family what was going on. I was getting ready to move. I wasn't going to be in the house with him anymore. He went through, he did a whole 180. He did, he did one of those abuser programs. He, said all the right things. This was the time when I thought he really did change. And, mind you, he's a police officer. When things happen, I'm not going to call the cops, because if he gets in trouble, he's going to get fired. And then, what's going to happen then? Who knows? And meanwhile, we have a house, we have kids, we have that, we have this. How hard is it for me to leave? And what am I going to go do? Live in a small apartment with kids, or, because, I still have to pay a mortgage? Like, there's so many factors, I think, why, and I don't think it's uncommon, because a lot of what I was reading about why people don't leave, and people do, they stay, maybe not so much in this type of a situation, but people stay in relationships because of financial reasons, and it's really sad, kind of that we have to dictate our happiness and our well-being around money. But, it's a fact. I mean, what are you going to do? Go file bankruptcy, go into something so that you can't provide for your kids. Like, it's hard. And then leave, I did at that point, I quit my job and everything. And I had a really good job. And I was like, listen, I can't. And then, of course, he did the 180, changed everything up. I go back, things were good. I think this was the longest time it was good, maybe 4 months, maybe 5. And then it started up again, way worse. Then it was more, we had a couple of occurrences there. And then he decided that he wanted to go, we would constantly apply for different police departments too, because he was never happy at this place of employment. He always wanted to go to other places. They treated him badly. They sucked. They were this, they were that. So mind you, during all of this stuff that's going on, we're sending him to different states. We're paying him to go rent cars, to go across, up to wherever, go down here, go there, to apply for all these jobs. Mind you, all these, every time you apply for a police job, you have to pay, money. You have to get a place to stay. Some of them have application fees too. So, there's lots of money involved in that. And, he would get down to the wire of some of them, and then he would just stop, or he wouldn't be happy with it, or he would bomb an interview, whatever it was. So we finally got him a job in our home state. We moved back home, sold our house, bought another house, and now we're closer with family and stuff. And there was probably, I think, 3 really bad occurrences since we've been home that he left for about a month or so, and then, we had something happen, like we had some weather issues, or we had something with the house, something that would make him come back because I needed help. Because, like, if I have a tree branch fall on the roof of my house, I certainly do not know the first thing about what I need to do to take care of it. I do now, but I didn't know then. So he has to come and kind of save the day. And then, then he's apologizing for his behavior. And he's, basically with his tail between his legs, wants to come back. And I took him back because what am I going to do? I'm going to run a house by myself, when I have things going on. So, I would take him back. And his big thing that he would say to me is that, I'm never going to leave you. I don't want to break up this family. It's horrible if we were to break up this family. Why would we want to do that? The kids need a father. They need a mother. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be a better man for you. I love you forever. I will never stop loving you. I want this to work more than anything in my life. I'll do whatever it takes. That's all he would say to me. But then, it got to the point where it's like, okay, you're saying these things, but you're not acting upon them. And that's where you really have to take a look back and say, well, it's just words. Like, what are you doing to do all of this? And then he's like, well, let's go to therapy. I said, okay, find a good therapist that deals with domestic violence, and I am on it. And then he would say, oh, now you don't. Then he would twist my words around and say, well, she doesn't want to go to therapy. That's not what I said. I said, I will go with you if A, B, and C. But the only thing he heard was, he doesn't want to go with me. So that's kind of, there's a whole bunch of everything I would say to him, he would twist around to his benefit and make it sound like something it totally wasn't. So, that happened throughout our whole marriage and our whole life with him. Like, that was just something that always happened. And he would do that with everybody else. It wasn't just, it was with everybody. So I guess towards the end, it was, I found out he was cheating on me. He had a full-blown relationship with someone else that he worked with, didn't work in the same capacity, but worked, somewhere along the line. And the reason why I found out was because I found a cell phone that he had in his bag. And meanwhile, things are kind of progressively going downhill. He's still doing, at this point, he's doing the abusive behaviors with me. He's, we're having occurrences where he's like, threatening me and, pushing me around, so to speak, and abusing me physically and mentally. So it was, I was just waiting for the ball to drop so I can just kick him out of the house and he'll never come back. Because, he would say things like, well, I'm not leaving my house. This is my house. So then I would have to be the one to leave, right? So needless to say, I found a phone. I called the number, spoke to this girl. She basically told me everything that I always thought this whole time. She said that he told her that he's been single for 7 months, that he only lives with me because of financial reasons, that he, doesn't have any sort of relationship with me other than the children, that he, basically the complete polar opposite of what he's telling me. So he's not only lying to me, he's lying to someone else. So she's thinking that, oh, this is great. I've got this weak divorced man, that I can build a relationship with. And, I told her the truth. And, I don't know what she took out of it, but, at that point, I was able to get him out of the house for good because he wasn't going to come back after that. Because all the time and I was actually, it's kind of weird to say, but I was like so relieved and so happy. Like, I'm like, go ahead, you can take him. He's yours, have him. And, he was working. I called him up and I'm like, listen, this is what I know. I know everything. Don't bother coming back to this house. If you come to this house, I will call the police. I will get a restraining order against you, and you are not welcome here anymore. And he obliged. He's like, of course, he's crying and telling me how much he loves me and oh, no, it's not true. Till this day, he will deny it. He told me he only slept with her once, and it was because he was drunk. He will still say that to this day, and I'm pretty sure they're living together at this point. And he will never admit it, which I find odd because I'm like, well, come on. What have you got to lose? Who cares? But, that was basically the whole reason why he's out. And I'm so relieved and I'm so glad. And it's really sad to say, but it took me basically catching him with his pants down for him to not come back in my life. And maybe it's because of all the times he constantly would accuse me of cheating on him, that, maybe he feels, I don't know if he feels bad about it or not. I'm sure he's justifying his behavior by what he thinks I've done, right? But, I filed in January, and, he's been kind of estranged from the kids. He doesn't come around. He doesn't provide anything here. He's just kind of like disappeared. He took his car that I was paying for. That actually ended up, something happened with it. So, got totaled and stuff. But he's just MIA and now that we're going through the court system, he hired this crazy lawyer, forced me to hire a crazy lawyer, which neither one of us have the money for, but we're doing, what are you going to do? The lawyer comes up with all these lies, talking about how much he, wants, needs to spend time with them, but he has 101 excuses about why he can't see the kids, right? That's where it is now. I'm just waiting for everything to kind of fall through and see what happens.
Yeah, so, for people who are listening, this episode won't be out until everything is finalized. So sometime, hopefully in September, everyone will hear this show. But you've been out of your relationship with him since, in a way, January?
Probably a little before that. I want to say October of last year. And
have you been doing therapy and healing? And when did you kind of dive into eventually showing up here on our show? What happened to get here? I've during the past, I think I've been going through healing for probably at least the last 3 years of my marriage, because I was doing a lot of reading. At first, when I used to want to fix our relationship, or when, both of us, I guess, wanted to fix, I would do a lot of relationship books and try to do therapy with him, a lot about things that, it takes two to tango and how we can work on our relationship. But then I realized once I started reading that Lundy Bancroft book, Why Does He Do That? Mm-hmm. A lot of his behaviors and a lot of what he was doing to me was spot on. And that kind of, I guess, gave me my awakening to kind of understand that, A, what he's doing is not normal. B,
it's pretty common. It's textbook. And see that us fixing the relationship is not the problem. He needs to fix himself and want to not be this abusive person. And then maybe, I'm sure that there's things that we can work on. There's things that everybody can work on. But if he's not willing to do the work on himself and, not be abusive, then there's no chance. And I think that's what really gave me the awakening to say, like, to even be strong enough to walk away from it, because I'm loyal. Like, I want it to work. I don't want my kids to have to worry about not having their dad around. But in the same respect, like, what are your healthy boundaries, and how much of this can I actually fix? I mean, I'm sure if I could fix it all myself, I would. But, and I'm not a saint and I'm not like perfect, but, I try to do the right thing. And just, it just hurts a little bit. And it's very sad that you have somebody who chooses to live like this and hurt people like that, people you supposedly love. And I think that's kind of what made me want to do more reading and want to learn more about it, because if I can help just one person by listening to what I went through, that's a win, And that, I think I just stumbled across your stuff because, just from listening to different podcasts and I listened to a lot of yours, and I was like, a lot of what, your stories, they help me too, because you don't feel alone, and you understand that what you're going through is not normal, and that you can thrive and you can have a normal relationship, and you're not crazy. You're not, a hot mess. You're not all these things that this person who's grooming you to think that you are, who is doing it for their own agenda. They're not doing it because they care. They're not doing it because they want to make you better. They're doing it because they're a rotten person and they have an agenda to hurt you. And I know that's kind of harsh to say, but in the same respect, like, when he's ready to do his work, I hope he can, and I hope it happens for him, but I don't really see it happening. And, at the point that I'm at with my healing is just kind of, you go through, I guess, kind of like along the lines of the stages, like you go through with grief, right? You go through your denial, you go through, I can't remember them all, I'm sorry. Then you go through your anger, you go through your acceptance, you go through your sadness or whatever it is. I've already gone through, I guess, like my realizing, that accepting the fact that I'm not the one to change him, he needs to change him. And it's been 20 plus years. He's not willing to do the work, so I just have to let it go. And then, I was, I think I'm still kind of a little angry for a little bit about, now that I'm realizing all the stuff that he's done to me, and that, how he made me feel, and even, not even so much for myself, but for my children, thinking what they have to deal with. So that kind of makes me upset. But then I also feel kind of sad for him because, what kind of life is that to live, to be like that? Like, how exhausting is it to have to think like that all the time, to have to put this act on, to have to lie all the time, to keep up with it? It's exhausting. And it makes me sad because, he's going to have, it's hard work to fix yourself and to do these things. And, like right now I do like weekly, sessions, and I have my kids in weekly sessions just to talk to somebody so that they can understand that what they've witnessed and even what they're going to go through in the future with him, because I'm sure that, I hope that they're going to have a relationship with him. I hope it's going to be a positive one, but I don't want him to pull the same stuff on them that he does with me. And, it's highly likely that that's probably going to happen. So I'm trying to think of the tools that they need to have in their toolbox to identify and to respond to it so that they're not going to be messed up from it. Because I can only control when they're with me. I can't control, like, down the road when we do visitation and all of that, like, the time that he's going to spend with them alone. So I think they need to be self-aware of their power and how they're going to react to it. And that's going to be hard.
With you as their mom, I'm going to say they're going to have a really good chance.
Right.
Like, I mean, you're doing all the right things. So, in the history of the show, it's tough. I hear so many stories, and I listen from a point of view of, this is my job, and I'm sitting here. It's hard to make me cry. You made me cry. You're part at the end there. I mean, it was very powerful, and I think today you're going to help a lot of people. You told your story really well, and I'm so happy that you came to tell your story. And before we leave, do you have one last thing you want to say to everyone?
I just think that, don't underestimate how strong it can be. And, just learn, just do the reading, do the research. And one thing that I realized too is that it's okay to ask for help. And whether it's from your family, whether it's, talking to someone, or even the local domestic, I know a lot of it is mental, but there are, a lot of it has to do with domestic too, is don't be afraid to talk to people and to learn. And it, it affects everybody. It's not just, this doesn't just happen to one class of person, or it doesn't just happen to different types of people all over the, it happens to everybody. And, just be self-aware and be strong, and don't be afraid to put your voice out there and ask for help and get it.
Well, Harmony, once again, I really want to thank you for being on our show today and telling your story, sharing your story. It's been an honor talking to you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And
thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome. And for everyone else out there who is listening, I hope you have a good night.